Oh hi, I didn't see you there. My name is Bliss Foster. Welcome to episode 2 of my ongoing series of runway analysis featuring the work of Martin Margiela. We kicked things off last week with the first show that Martin Margiela ever did at his own house was Spring-Summer 1989. We now move into Fall-Winter 1989. The Rizzoli Women's Collections book actually starts us off into this collection pretty well, and I'm just going to read aloud from what they wrote here. The invitation to Maison Martin Margiela's second collection appeared in Paris Boom Boom, a weekly advertisement circular published every Monday with a circulation of 260,000. The classified ad for the show and the showroom was listed under the miscellaneous heading between an ad for a Canon camera and a plumbing, electrical, and locksmith service. To the paper's surprise, the fashion house ordered 150 copies of the circular. The page containing the ad, circled in red, served as the invitation. The cheapest runway invitation of all time. And that's such a good idea and one that so encapsulates the spirit of the house. It's kind of surprising that that didn't become the permanent idea for the invitations. For the first show, they were in the 3rd arrondissement of Paris. We have now moved out to the 10th arrondissement. The 1st arrondissement is considered to be the center of Paris. And the farther out we move, the more unusual that is, because again, every runway show that's worth its salt during Paris Fashion Week is happening in massive temporary tents that are being constructed at the Louvre. First we did kind of a theater cafe location. We've now moved to a underground nightclub. We are going to jump straight into the looks themselves, but I do want to give you a little bit of starting information about the styling of the show and kind of the general setup and vibes. This go around, instead of doing a live DJ set the way that they did for the last one, they actually had a live band show up to play with intermittent bits of live DJing. For the most part, it's all like alternative rock kind of stuff, and so occasionally they'll have a actual record playing the original vocals of a song, and other times the band is just playing covers of the song. The cover band on stage is wearing the white lab coats that now are becoming a established fixture of the house's image. The white coats are meant to redirect the audience's attention away from the identities of the individuals playing those instruments and to remind everyone this is all a single piece of art. The band, the models, the clothes, the house, the designers, everything is just Maison Martin Margiela. If I may be completely honest with you, the audio from this video is absolutely atrocious, and so I'm not going to include it here. But I can clue you into the fact that the songs that are being played are being cut off very abruptly, and they'll change in the middle and stuff. It sounds very much like if someone was in their bedroom just playing 7-inch records by themselves. You don't really have the pressure of needing to finish out a specific track or do the full intro. You can kind of just start the thing where you know you like to listen to it and then kind of cut it off and swap it out when you want to. It feels very personal. The styling of the show is something that's very much up to interpretation. All the models' nails are reflective. They like literally have little tiny mirrors on their fingernails, which is reflective of the disco ball that they're all walking directly underneath. And it also sort of plays in with the specialty tabby boot from this season, which is a bright party all night silver. But those elements are all in very stark contrast to the actual clothes that we're seeing, which is this very drab, lots of browns and grays and very muted tones, kind of an avocado palette, if you will. One of the more memorable parts of the entire show is that most models have on their hands this kind of faux ring thing where they took a ribbon and interlaced it between all of the fingers, so you have this very distinct what is that kind of look to their hands. We also have a black ribbon that's tied around most of their necks. Usually it's a pretty thick black ribbon that takes up most of the space of their necks that holds their hair down, so it sort of creates this very strange bob effect with the remainder of their hair that's visible. This could be a 90-degree twist from the accessory that they showed off a whole lot in their first season, which was the jabot, but this seems to just be a black ribbon and its primary function is to hold your hair in this weird way. So I think all of these details are meant to imbue kind of a spirit of bohemianism into this show. They're all sort of reminiscent of a young, beautiful, but very broke girl who's going out with her friends to a club, and she doesn't really have money to go get a really flashy outfit, so she sort of makes it work with what she has at home. Little details like tying ribbons on your fingers or bobbing up your hair with this weird necklace thing, those are all details that don't cost anything but do look very striking. And even if they are wearing very drab, conservative clothes, they're finding ways to jazz it up. All right, let's jump to it. Look 1. I'm actually gonna scoot up here. Okay, look one features the model Paula Girardi. Apparently when she first came out from behind the curtain and walked down the stage steps, she tripped and fell. And most people present thought that that was part of the show, and so they clapped and cheered. Props to Paula for not getting discouraged and continuing to do her thing. And honestly, who's to say that that wasn't on purpose? That is such a perfect Margiela thing. Thus far, we've seen a lot of evidence that he is trying to elevate the everyday and elevate things that are just normal and beautiful. And sometimes normal, beautiful people trip. This would be career-ending for any other house in Paris Fashion Week, but this seems to be the one place where you could safely, in the basement club of some random part of Paris, trip and fall and everyone say, she's cute, it's fine. Okay, so we have a very complicated first look, as we always do with Martin. During the first show, spring-summer 1989, the whole runway was lined with a cotton fabric. This wouldn't be something that you would notice because it really wasn't all that noticeable. So after the first show was done, they rolled that fabric back up and kept it. Then, in preparation for this show, they rolled that back out at their studio and had models walk back over it using the tabby boots that had been dipped in red paint. So the runway itself is a textile. Martin loves the color white, remember, because white is something that displays age. It shows you the life that the garment has lived very clearly. And so the thing that's been walked over by 50 some odd people, that's been scuffed up, that's gotten twisted a little bit, that's gotten stretched out in weird ways, they then kind of glorify the event of its use by walking back over it and decorating it with more use. They then cut that textile up into the pattern pieces necessary for a vest. Instead of stitching it together, they tape it together. And then Martin Margiela, taking the piss out of the ceremony of runway shows, takes a big black Sharpie and writes the date and location on a artisanal runway garment like it's a VHS tape. My notes here say, so in this way, we're remembering a time past by reusing something practical as something wearable. And we celebrate the imprint that a body leaves on things by recreating the wearing out in a very obvious way. This is a celebration of worn clothes. I couldn't have said that better myself. That just seemed like a very complicated sentence to memorize. So this, the first look of the second season, fall-winter 1989, this is the first artisanal piece by Maison Martin Margiela. That tag that's become the emblem of Maison Margiela at this point, that's not going to be used for another 10 years in these runway shows, but the different lines are represented by those different numbers, right? Some are menswear, some are accessories, some are everyday objects for the home, some are artisanal runway pieces. Okay, so artisanal runway pieces is the 0 number, and this is the first one that fits into that little 0. This look is the foundation on which he will build some of the most memorable pieces in this house's history in the coming years. And it is all concept. Some of them will be a little bit more wearable, but this one is all concept. It is utterly unsellable, except at Sotheby's 20 years later. The rest of what she's wearing is meant to be kind of in service to this artisanal piece, but the other thing that's worth noting is that, though it's not actually in the footage of the video here, the long skirt that she's wearing has darts on the front of it, right where the knees would hit the front of the skirt as a person is walking, that emphasizes the knees, that sort of gives it this kind of stretched out quality. For guys, you're familiar with this effect when your skinny jeans, if you sit in them too much or if you sit cross-legged in them and you stand up and there's this kind of ballooning that happens in front of your knees, that's what it's trying to emulate in the skirt. It is already a well-worn piece when you get it, and it's well-worn by its meticulous construction. Marty really likes worn clothes. Can you tell? I feel like half of you guys are like giving up on this video in look one. They're just like, this is too long. Looks 2, 3, and 4 are very, very similar to this first look. He's wanting to emphasize very loudly to people that this highly conceptual piece that he's starting out with here, that this is something that is supposed to be a big takeaway. You always want to pay attention in runway shows if designers are clearly repeating a look. They're trying to get someone's attention. They're trying to wake you up. So if we skip ahead a few looks, we see this very striking shearling jacket. It has a very loud, exposed line to it, which goes along with the continuity of Martin demonstrating the way that clothes are put together on the outside of the clothes. And he's found a way to present that idea here that's very buyable. Shearling coats with exposed lines were something that was kind of a World War II pilot thing, but by this point it had become something that was in the fashion rotation for houses to do. A lot of other places had done a shearling jacket with an exposed line. So again, he's found a way to demonstrate his concept, but in a way that is something that people would really want to buy. And also that is pretty playful. I mean, usually shearling jackets with exposed lines look something like this, where the exposed line is there, but it's pretty subtle. But here, I mean, look at this thing. Like, there's almost more exposed line than there is jacket. And I mean, inevitably, those lines going everywhere on the jacket remind me of this look from the last show where it was meant to look like pattern pieces on a dress form. But here in the second show, that idea has been elevated to a very luxurious garment. In the next look, we see another shearling jacket with an exposed line that matches the color of the jacket. It's just another option so that buyers know that they have options. By the time we get to the next look, which is another shearling jacket, but this time it is floor length. This thing is very extra. And it makes me wonder if maybe they're trying to compensate a little for something here. Let's think about this a little bit. So Maison Margiela is a very new brand. They've been a brand now publicly for a little over a year. Their first show was generally successful. A lot of people didn't take them seriously, but a lot of buyers placed orders for the clothes. Considering it was their first show ever, they considered it to be a success. But part of success in this context is being able to meet your business agreements on time, and they weren't able to do that. Most places that ordered clothes and shoes from them didn't ever get them. I haven't found any information that really tells me a lot about why that actually is, but the bottom line is somebody paid for something and then they didn't get it. So I wonder if here they're maybe trying to demonstrate that they have upgraded their professionalism a little bit. They're still keeping very close to their concept. Their first 4 looks were basically elevated trash on a runway, but they're very quick on the upkeep to assure everyone we are a serious fashion house. We make real clothes. In fact, we make very luxurious clothes. Because this specific floor-length shearling jacket is just, it's a lot. We can't see a whole lot about this next look because our poor camera wrangler had a short seizure. Okay, so the next look is really cool. This is an ankle-length knitwear piece. It looks fairly normal from the front, but when the model turns, that's when we really see all the magic in this piece. The back of it is a cotton lining material, and we can see that the garment can be cinched together at the small of the back using something called a Grosgrain Martingale. Of course, this goes right along with the functionality of clothing being displayed on the outside. But if we dive a little bit deeper, the term grosgrain just means a heavy ribbed fabric. It's something that's used mostly for practical stuff because there's nothing delicate about it. Like heavy straps for loading trucks and stuff are made of grosgrain. Furthermore, a martingale are the straps on a horse that keep it from raising its head too high. So we dive a little bit deeper into the Margiela theme of reusing things. And it's also interesting that something can be made of men's sweaters, a cotton lining material, and horse riding equipment, and it still manages to be a very delicate piece of clothing. In the next look, we see basically the same idea for the sweater. This time it has buttons running all the way down to the floor, and I honestly can't really tell what's happening in this next look. It's cool, but I can't really tell where certain garments begin and end. This is kind of an ongoing issue for me, is that I often question if I'm even seeing the garments correctly on the bodies. If we skip forward a little bit, we see the same ideas that we've looked at before, but we've incorporated a little bit of denim into it. So to kind of go to the broader picture, in this section of the show, we're seeing a lot of men's garments that are being recreated as floor-length dresses. Now, just to be clear, my guess is that they are not buying vintage men's sweaters, cutting them up, and creating dresses out of them. My guess is that they are making the dresses using the men's sweaters as a reference, so they're recreating them themselves. I have no concrete evidence to back that up. That is my guess. Moving forward, we see another centerpiece concept for this runway show. It is a 3-piece suit with a skirt instead of a waistcoat. But wait, friends, this is not merely a styling choice. This is a new proposal for women's formal wear. The suit pant and the skirt are a single garment. Even more clever is that the waistband of the suit pant and the skirt are in different places, but one is made of a lining material, so it's very clear to the wearer how you are supposed to line it on your hips so that it has the desired effect. This is a great example of why Margiela is so brilliant. They're not just proposing a cool new idea, they are bringing a lot of technique and construction know-how into the game. If all this was just, what if garbage was clothes and what if skirts were over pants? That's not actually very cool. What's cool is being able to give a real reason for someone to make that kind of change in their wardrobe. You design things so well that you can break people's wardrobe habits. Woo! I get so jazzed about this stuff. 2 more quick details before we move on. 1, cool, a champagne cork is a necklace. 2, that collar splits in the back and I love it. As we move on, we see this same look repeated in a couple of small variant ways. I think by this point, Martin has realized that the shoulder he designed is one that could really make him famous, so he's trying to find ways to work that shoulder into different parts of our lives. So here we have formal wear that features the shoulder. It's also worth noting that all of these suits have exposed seams on them. Even in his proposal for office wear, he is going full Marty. So we've now established that this is an idea, this idea of the jacket with the skirt and then the pants, that this is a thing, and this is one of the foundational looks of this entire show. Folks, our dear camera wrangler is trying his level best, but the lights got the best of us on this one. I have no idea what this look is. Fortunately, the next one is really interesting. Here we have the same jacket, and then we have a floor-length dress that's in basically the same color and material as the jacket. This is thrillingly simple, but it is a really cool proposal for a formal wear variant for women. Something about the plainness of the front of that dress, with it just falling straight down, it being a smooth, flat surface, along with the rigidity of the jacket, it gives it the same cohesion that one has with a 2 or 3 piece suit. This looks like a combo that could conceivably be worn to a wedding if it was in a different color palette. They're just firing new ideas down the runway. There's like plenty more where that came from, send it down. Okay, so this next one is really interesting. So typically in women's tops, there's a tuck that's laid horizontally over the bust area so that the shirt will evenly accommodate for breasts. Here, they've put that tuck on the outside. Completely defeats the purpose of that tuck. By turning that inside out, it exposes the secret a little bit and kind of becomes sort of a sexy power move thing. Something that was very subtle and practical before gets flipped inside out and becomes something that's very obvious and sort of suggestive. A couple of looks later, this incredible vest is using the buckles from 7 different belts. It's an example of something where they Frankenstein together something from lots of different clothes, but once they have the thing finished and in front of you, it's like, oh my gosh, like, how has this not been made before? This is beautiful. All rise. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the most legendary Maison Martin Margiela pieces of all time, the vest made out of broken plates. All right, you can sit down. In the countless articles that try to summarize Martin's career in a couple of paragraphs, this piece always gets shown, but it never gets talked about. I do not pretend to have any kind of answers about what this thing means or its hidden messages, but I do think it asks an interesting question. As the audience, when we're looking at this piece, we don't know if they went out and found broken plate pieces and then reconstituted them into this vest, or if they bought plates and destroyed them to create the vest. If they found broken garbage pieces to begin with, that's them kind of glorifying the trash and the found objects of the world and saying that this stuff is usable, it just depends on your perspective on the thing. This can become a priceless museum piece quality level garment. You just have to be able to see it the right way. The other is kind of similar messages around found objects, but it is necessitating destruction in order to bring about a new beautiful form. And I don't know the answer to that, but it's a cool question. Regardless, this piece won Martin the Andem Awards, which he was the first recipient of. Following up this incredible look, we get a little bit of insight into the business side of things because we get to see the sellable version of this idea. We see a leather vest that's been made out of different shapes and colors of different leather pieces. While they only made a few of the porcelain vests, this one is surely going to be mass produced for all their customers. Next, we get a visually arresting look. This part of the show is an absolute roller coaster. That is a wire mesh jacket that's styled over a white shirt with removable black sleeves. The jacket is a reproduction of an adjustable dress form. You've seen pictures of dress forms a million times. Actually, wait, let me show you. Lindsay was using one just now. These things. They're great and wonderful. We obviously still use them today. The only thing that can be kind of a pain in the ass is that they are one size. So for an atelier, especially one that was working with lots of customers, had to have dozens or scores of these things in order to accommodate different sizes and types of bodies. So the idea of an adjustable dress form would have been just an absolute dream back then. The image of the dress form as a wearable object is something that's going to become a very consistent theme in Margiela's future shows. So we will remember that moving forward. Now we've reached the midpoint of the show. The model emerges wearing a variant on the first couple of looks in the show, I think. It's a vest that's covered in silver sequins. This is the only time when the clothes seem to start kind of getting in jive with the nails and the boots and the disco ball and the club atmosphere. Even the chairs that everyone's sitting in are dipped in gold paint. Like the whole atmosphere and vibe of this place is everyone's here to party, except for the clothes. With the one exception of this look here. I'm not really sure what to do with that conceptually. It's just interesting to know that this seems to be the only coked up garment among a bunch of drab ones. We got a really great cut on the double-breasted wool coat here. We also get to see the Margiela shoulder executed in a thick wool, which I will say is probably one of the easiest fabrics to do this kind of stuff with. In my opinion, if we're to see the Margiela shoulder executed the most purely, this is probably the look thus far that's giving us that vision. Mid-weight and thick wool is just really nice to work with. Here we get a little bit of craziness. Someone tries to trip the model? Like that seemed to sort of be playful, like they kind of seem to know each other, but still, dude, no. We also get kind of a rare look at the top of the shoulder. So good. For the next few looks, we continue to see a series of big black coats. I imagine the same thought went into these as did with the other pieces, but it's kind of hard to see any of that minutia because the color black tends to hide things in textiles. Although this one has some kind of attachment on the front. That's pretty cool. This look is crazy because it gives us some insight into the early graphic work with Martin Margiela. I don't at all associate him with this idea of big stripes and color blocks, but here we are. And I realize I keep talking about the shoulder, but it must be said, it looks great in gray. Hey, have you noticed that those scarves all seem really, really ridiculously long? Well, here we find out why. It seems that they have taken two scarves and they have tied them together at the ends. I imagine they've done that with all the looks that have featured scarves, but this is just one where we can really see that front and center on the front of her neck. This to me is kind of a continuation of that same idea of the girl going out with friends but not having the money for a new outfit, and so she kind of does something quirky with the stuff that she has to stand out. Martin is so great at telling these stories through the tiniest little nuance and detail. If we skip forward past another few coat looks, we can see another awesome knitted pattern. Then we skip a few more boring coat looks. But then here we get something that's a blink and you miss it kind of thing. The shirt that she's wearing underneath that outerwear piece is a regular dress shirt that she's wearing backwards. This was something that we saw last season with the backwards skirt. That's a pretty easy adjustment to make. You can literally just turn the skirt around on the model's hips and you don't have to actually change anything about the construction of the thing. But with this is a big undertaking. To be able to put on a button-up shirt front ways and then be able to button it all up and still have free range of motion, that takes some reworking of the original pattern of the shirt. We actually see this type of shirt being worn in the documentary We Margiela. This is another example where you can't just propose a wacky idea, you have to come equipped with the technique and the construction knowledge to be able to make the thing work for real people. Next, we have a very striking jumper. The proportions call back to the shearling jackets early on in the show with the exaggerated tummy coverage of the exposed lines. They also seem to have piecemealed a few different sweaters together. Next, we get to see the Margiela shoulder done in heavy knitwear. The sleeves of the sweater also seem to be comically long. That's another thing that we'll see repeated a few different times, something that is much longer on your arms or your legs, so that when you put it on, it's able to stack up in a really interesting way. The next is a chunky sweater with some horizontal stripes. This seems to be another one that's meant to seduce buyers. The next look is fairly standard, but we do have a little hint of asymmetry. There's a horizontal dart that's here by the model's right-hand side that isn't matched on her left-hand side. Not really sure what to do with that, but it is there, and even stranger that a couple of looks later we see the same piece with matching horizontal darts. I don't know. I'm not sure. This next look pitches us the same basic idea that we were dealing with earlier in the show, the pant and the skirt combo, but it's being matched with a cable knit sweater. So the same basic idea that was being used to sell us a very formal look before has now been shown to be a very casual fall look. I'm thinking that they hired some kind of sales manager or something for this season because this is all very clearly thought out as a capsule wardrobe. From a business perspective, this collection seems to have been saying, if you buy 12 or 13 pieces from this collection, that is all you'll need to wear for all of fall and winter. They're just demonstrating a very practical range for the design. It's very, very well done. Next, we have an absolutely epic coat. This is maybe the best Franken garment that we've seen so far from the house. Many pieces of leather, and the sleeves are also clearly from different sources that themselves have been modified. We're closing it out big. We have a massively oversized shearling coat that is immediately followed up by a gargantuan piecemeal floor-length shearling coat. This is clearly mocking all of the very high-end luxurious furs that women of Paris would be wearing. It's showing that same idea with a very rag picker vibe to it. But it's really cool because when you see something that's a very common practice that's being executed very intentionally by skilled artists, it can kind of reshape your idea of what a beautiful thing is and can be, which is of course one of the foundational concepts for the house. And the models return to the catwalk for a classic flood with a little bit of a twist. Typically a flood is something that comes at the end of a runway show. It's where all of the models wearing the same clothes that they wore before come out and they walk very close together so that everyone can kind of review the collection and see it all together, sort of. Martin hates normal things, so we're not doing that. Instead, they are all wearing the white lab coats and they all have silver glitter on their chests. Near the end of the flood, the models are joined on stage briefly by the design team sporting the same white coats. A final statement to remind the audience that the work that's being done is the work of the Maison, not of a star designer, not of the career of a specific model. The art you see is a single, cohesive unit. Thank you so much for joining me. I have loved making this series and I am so excited to continue making more. If you've not already subscribed, that's so confusing. You should subscribe. You should follow me on Instagram. And you should follow me on Twitter. Humongous thanks to everyone who has been incredible at helping me out with information and providing resources to make this project possible. I could not do this on my own. There are a ton of people who know a lot more about Margiela than I do, and those people have been incredibly generous with the information that they themselves have fought so hard to get. Also, special thanks to Martin Margiela, who's a pretty cool guy. I love you all. Good night.